Good evening and welcome to our annual Healthy Women, Healthy World summer movie event. My name is Deb Perry and I am a volunteer member of the organizing team tonight. We are so excited that you have joined us for this educational opportunity. Our goal tonight is that you will gain a better understanding of the dire situation in Venezuela and Colombia and the vital assistance that Medical Teams International is providing to these migrants. We will be viewing the acclaimed and moving documentary film, The Crossing. It tells the story of desperate Venezuelan migrants seeking refuge from their devastated country and the generosity and solidarity offered to them by a small Colombian border city. Following the film, we have amazing guests who will speak to us and answer your questions for about 45 minutes. We will hear from the director and producer of the documentary, Colombian native Juliana Penaranda-Loftus. Juliana began her career in television before moving to the United States to complete her master's in film and video. Her production company, Hidden Village Films, focuses on creating socially relevant films such as Landfill Harmonic and The Crossing. Juliana is calling in from Nashville, Tennessee tonight. Next, we will hear from Villada, a Medical Teams International Program Manager who is joining us from Santa Marta, Colombia. And finally, Steve Cooke, the Country Director in Colombia for Medical Teams International, will join them for the question and answer session. We are so grateful for the opportunity to screen this film with you all and to our speakers for their participation in this program. Well, we have just a few Zoom reminders. In this webinar format, your audio and video features are not available. But please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen at any time during the movie or the program to ask questions of our presenters. And for the best movie viewing experience tonight, you will be watching the film on your own using the Vimeo link and password that is in the chat now. You will need to click on the chat button at the bottom of your screen to bring the chat up and click on that link. And we suggest that you leave this Zoom session open and use a new browser window to view the movie. At the end of the 40-minute film at approximately 7:45 Pacific time, please immediately return to this Zoom session to hear from our terrific guests. So we like to begin with a moment of reflection in our events, to pause and think about your home and what it means to you. Home has taken on a whole new meaning during the global pandemic. Home is a place of safe harbor and security. But what if you had to leave, to flee, unsure of where you were going and how you were going to survive? This poem by Nikita Gill called "They Took Your Home From You, Now They Call You a Refugee" speaks to this heartbreaking experience. Home is a language you grew in your mouth that now no longer exists anywhere but inside your heart and head. Home is where you had to teach your children how to run from men who are dressed in war and blood. Home is now a legend, a story where you grew up, happy and safe before. They set your entire world aflame. Home is where you ran to the sea because the place you once belonged to now no longer remembers your name. Home was your refuge. Now, after cruelly taking it from you, they call you a refugee. The Venezuelan migrants are fleeing a different kind of war, a war of survival. Surrounded by starvation, economic collapse, repression, and poor healthcare services in their country, they flee across the border rather than the sea, and their home now exists only in their hearts. Try to imagine how difficult it is to leave your home, your country. May we open our hearts tonight to the plight of the migrants that we will meet in this film. Now it is my pleasure to welcome the film director, Juliana Penaranda-Loftus, and she will introduce her documentary. Welcome, Juliana.
Hi, Deb. Thank you so much for the nice introduction. Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share this film with all of you. It's very special. The film takes place in my hometown of Cooke, Colombia. And for the next 40 minutes, I hope to take you to the border between Colombia and Venezuela, so you can experience what is living there, and you can find out what's going on there. I thank you, the Medical Teams International, for believing in the film and for giving me the opportunity to share the film with all of you. Thank you.
Okay, so it's time to click the Vimeo link in the chat and note the password. So you'll have to enter the password and go watch the film, watch The Crossing, and be sure to return to this Zoom session immediately after the movie for all the further great discussion. I hope you enjoy the film. Well, welcome back, everyone. We hope you enjoyed that film, The Crossing. What a moving and impactful film. We are so fortunate to have filmmaker Juliana Penaranda-Loftus here tonight. And it's a great opportunity to interview her about the making of the film and gain some insights from her unique perspective as a native Colombian and documentarian. Thank you again for being with us, Juliana. Let's get started. First, I just can't tell you how much I enjoyed the film and how I just felt I was drawn to that border, and I was right there and feeling the energy and the terrifying circumstances. And it's just you did a remarkable job of conveying that. So our first question is, what difficulties did you encounter in making this film?
Well, thanks everybody for taking the time to watch the film. And Deb, I'm glad that you mentioned that. I'm glad that I was able to do my job and take you to the border. Well, I guess the first challenge is the personal challenge. You know, I heard this story on a Sunday, and I knew I had to get on a plane the next day. So it was the calling. It's in your heart. As soon as as a filmmaker, when you hear this story, it's like, it's there. And then that night I couldn't sleep. My husband told me, have you heard what's happening in the border? And I really couldn't sleep. And then the next day I said, this is the opportunity I have, that God's given me, to tell the world what is happening in Venezuela and what's happening in the border in my city. I wasn't prepared, so that was the first challenge, leaving my kids, leaving the projects I was working on, and the second challenge was the logistical challenge, because it's like it takes time to plan a film, and to plan a documentary and to find your characters. And it was very different for this one. It was using my air miles to go to Colombia last minute. There were no tickets. There was no crew. Everybody was traveling, like journalists from all over the world wanted to cover that concert that you saw in the film. And it was just that nobody knew where Colombia was. So it was my opportunity to tell the world what was happening there as a person from there. So the technical challenge was, and then once you get there is the challenge of how do I tell this story? You have to start filming right away. And of course, everything that you encounter as you are filming, and knowing that the border where you grow up, I crossed that bridge so many times. I had all my childhood. It was a real, especially that bridge. Excuse me, there are three bridges that connect Cúcuta and Venezuela, but many of my life and my memories are connected to that bridge. So that's why I feel like it's a calling that I have to help to tell what's happening there. So they're all sort of different challenges.
Yeah, boy, that's amazing that you were able to mobilize that quickly and get down there. So terrific. So the migrants featured in the film have very powerful stories. How did you decide who to feature, and was it difficult to get their involvement? The first thing, it was asking them if they were willing to share their story, because this was like a different type of film where you are afraid to be in front of the camera. You may be afraid to be in front of the camera in case that somebody else, from the government in Venezuela sees it. So the first question that I would ask, it was, are you willing to be on a documentary that may be shown all over the world? And I can remember right now that almost everybody said yes. They were very certain that they would want to participate with that. I had so many testimonies, and it was during post that I had beautiful stories, and I just couldn't tell it all because I didn't, like when you're telling a documentary, you don't want it to become like a news. The format is just different, and I wanted to be able to get into certain stories more than others. So it was just moving your head and saying, wow, there's something interesting that is happening here. For example, where is the place where all the Venezuelans gather in Cúcuta? And then there is this park where everybody just gather, and it's like 80% or 90% of the people that are there are Venezuelans, and it's just approaching to them and telling them, this is who I am, would you like to participate on this? And I just can tell on the faces, it's like, I want to talk to this person, I want to know what's going on, and then the other side, it was also one, it was the people were crossing the border just to find medicine. There are different type of Venezuelans. There are others that are just passing by, wants to stay in Colombia, and others to go to other countries. And in the film, as you can tell, you also see this powerful woman who is mobilizing all these, the delivery of the humanitarian aid. So I thought she was incredible, and especially, seeing a woman and seeing men supporting women, because that's why I also follow David, because I heard David telling the whole crew, we need to support our woman, let the woman go first. So I said, oh, wow, who is this interesting man too? So, and then I had to film at that moment, it was just different. Usually what I do is I ask for permission first. And there I was like with the cameras, was like, okay, get that woman, get that man. And then when I was done, then I would tell them
mean, imagine me asking for permission there when they're shooting at us right there. So it's just instinct and it just paying attention. And a lot of, it was really hard in post, leaving it for 40 minutes. I'm used to doing long format documentaries or films. So it was hard taking stories out during post-production.
I can imagine. I mean, if you had so many willing people, yes, I mean, so many compelling stories to share, it must have been very difficult. Wow. And reminder, everybody, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A for our Q&A session at the end of our interview here. Well, Juliana, what story that you heard or person you met while making the film maybe keeps you up at night, or is there someone you just can't get out of your mind?
Yes. Well, the stories of the people that were crossing just to find medicine. And this person, that day, I didn't have the means to have that specific day, a sound person. And so my camera person was doing this scene, and it was so many people passing by, and this woman she has been roped. And she only had, I can't remember right now, but maybe like $8, and she has walked so many miles to get to Colombia to get her medicine. And when I find out how much do you need to find your medicine, and she was desperate, she was crying, and she just said $5. And I was like, oh my God, of course I'm gonna give you that money. But it's just seeing this them going through so much to find some medicine in Colombia, vaccines, especially insulin, and all different medicines. And I was like, it was really hard. But the story also of seeing the moms, the single moms at night, just getting ready to sleep on the streets with their kids. And that interview that you see a mom and the daughter just look at her and realizes, I'm a mom, so I can stop crying when I see this, and realizes that, wow, look what my mom is going through and how bad it feels my mom that I'm sleeping on the street. That seeing the pain of a mom that can afford something better for their children, it was painful. And it wasn't just a mom. I was surrounded, I'm sorry, everybody. I was surrounded by so many moms, single moms, that were trying to figure it out what they were gonna give to their families to eat that night. And so I remember I had the budget to pay my driver that day. Well, I'm like, oh God, well, that budget was gone, that night for that, right? I'm like, every time I'm like, I'll figure it out how to do it, because it was just so last minute that I couldn't get people on board to support the film while I was there. And recently, I feel like I have to share this with you, because you said what story keeps me at night. And about 2 months ago, I saw this film, and it's different because I'm the one used to showing films to move people. And I saw this short documentary on kids that are crossing the border by themselves. And some of them are being sexually exploited. And they were a pregnant teen. She was 14. And I saw that, and I contacted journalists myself. And I'm like, I need to know who is taking care of these kids. I couldn't sleep for 3 days. Just imagine that every day that I wasn't reacting, these kids were having to go through atrocities. And so I was somehow able to help that group of kids. And lately, I just spend a lot of my time doing this social work. I should be doing more films and telling more stories, but it takes time to help so many people, so everything that we can do, all of us, to alleviate the pain of them, it's a blessing.
Yeah, I was moved by that same scene when I noticed the daughter looking back at her mom, and just, yeah, the women and children impacted by this crisis is just appalling. Well, how has the situation changed in Cúcuta since this film was made in 2019?
It has changed a lot. And well, especially because, you know, it changed the life for everybody, changed because of the COVID. But we noticed, or the organizations that are keeping track of the amount of immigrants, refugees, and immigrants that are leaving the country, is more children are coming. And many of them are actually unaccompanied children without parents. That's one. And so many things are happening because in that border there are illegal groups, so they are facing so many risks. That's one. And also the COVID is just the Venezuelans that are in Colombia, a lot of them don't have, I mean, they sell stuff on the street, they have informal jobs. And with what happened in the COVID, they were left without nothing, with the little that they have. And so that was really hard for that. And with the COVID also, they were not able to access a lot of like the medical help that normally the government could help with the local hospitals, but they were overwhelmed with all the situation with the COVID, so they couldn't take care of the other medical needs that they had. So that was challenging. And now the perception of the Colombians have changed too, because they have, I have to say, they have been receiving Venezuelans for years now. And we are grateful because Venezuelans once received Colombians too. So we want to pay back that generosity. But we need international help. And that's why I'm here talking to you today, because Colombia cannot do this by themselves. And that the country is taking a lot of the weight right now. And you may hear my dog there, sorry. Yes, so it has been really hard on the Colombian population to receive this. The government, it was not prepared. You know, we're going through a lot of challenges, the government in itself. So imagine having another 2 million people living in your country within, I would say, the last 60 years. So it's getting tougher. And we need to remind Colombians why we receive Venezuelans in the first place. That is challenging for everybody.
Wow, yeah. It's just a lot to ask for a country to accept so many additional people.
But it's just that the country is also going through some sort of, you know, violence, war, narco traffic, and corruption, and healthcare issues too. So adding up the immigration to this, it adds more stress to the country and to the citizens, because if the country is not prepared to receive this, the citizens feel it too, and it falls on the citizens. Right. But graciously, we're here because we are brothers and sisters. We see Venezuelans as brothers and sisters, and we want to be able to help.
Great. Boy, I would think we could talk to you all night, Juliana, but I wish we had more time. But I would like to just turn to talk about the humanitarian response that Medical Teams International is mounting in Colombia. And I'd like to introduce Karen Villada, joining us from Santa Marta, Colombia. Karen leads the Medical Teams International response in Santa Marta. She has her master's in social studies, and as the program manager, Karen is a tireless advocate for Venezuelan migrants and their access to health care. She's here to tell us about the current situation in her area and the critical care her team is providing daily. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Deb. Good night, everyone. I'm so happy to be here in this moment, and many thanks for having me here, for having us. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So, well, once we know the detailed overview that Juliana's films shows us how the crisis that has been going on at the borders, we can ask ourselves what happened next. What happens after crossing the border? So I am Karen Villada, Program Manager for Medical Teams International, an NGO that provides humanitarian assistance in health since 1979 worldwide, and in Colombia since 2020. I want to tell you a little about what we do to support Venezuelan migrants precisely when they cross the borders and begin their journey in Colombia territory. These are the most common routes used by Venezuelan migrants, some to seek stability in Colombia and others to cross to the south, usually to Ecuador. They can enter through Arauca, Cúcuta, or La Guajira for Maicao. If they enter through Cúcuta or Arauca, they cross south through Yopal, Boyacá, and Bogotá. That is the center of the country. And if they enter through Maicao, La Guajira, they tend to stay on the Caribbean coast. So we are in these 2 points in the red stars. We have a presence in these 2 cities or departments that are Magdalena, attending those who enter through Maicao, and one in Boyacá, attending those who come from Cúcuta and go to Bogotá. After crossing, they may be in transit, crossing, walking in many cases, or maybe looking for stability with permanent vocation, with long-term plans or to be here to try to have more opportunities to establish their lives. So you can already imagine the challenge that migrants have crossing or looking for these opportunities to satisfy their basic needs. For example, the generating income, the food, housing, well-being, security in a violent and unequal country like is Colombia per se. So in the cases of who come in transit, we offer some services in Boyacá, which is a point in the middle of the road for walkers. We allocate some help points where they can access to useful information to their trips. They can access as well to community health education with prevention and health promotion issues, like these examples. And they also receive hygiene kits, which contain items such as thermal blanket, water bottle, soap, toothpaste, toothbrush, flashlight, reusable sanitary napkins, diapers, and these kind of things. And as well, they receive kits for prevention of COVID-19 with masks, alcohol, and it always comes with the respective informative awareness. In the case of those migrants who come with a permanent vocation, we support Boyacá and Magdalena, both of these places. In this case, we have the priority of assisting those migrants who are in an irregular immigration status and don't have access to the state health services. And for this group, we attend or we prioritize to the children under 5 years with prevalent diseases and to women reproductive age. For example, the women who are pregnant or who are seeking for family planning. Our strong strategy is the community work. We do it through the volunteers groups made up of community members, in some cases, Venezuelan migrants willing to help their peers, and the community host as well. Our community education consists of topics of interest to the target that we attend. The idea is that we offer things that allow them to identify, for example, symptomatology of a sexually transmitted disease, to identify warning signs in a pregnancy, to identify respiratory symptoms before turning in a pneumonia. This kind of knowledge is that we are providing. Complementing this communitarian support, some services are provided through health centers, prenatal checkups, labs, tests, micronutrients. We receive many women with 8 or 9 months of pregnancy without a single prenatal control, without knowing what's the sex of their children is, or if they are in a good health or not. Mothers with children without any vaccination scheme, with weight and height disorders, or even with symptoms like fever, diarrhea, without being able to access to medical care and attention. For the woman in the reproductive age, the families are supported with the family planning awareness and take preventive measures where needed. We raise awareness and screen for some sexuality transmitted disease, provide treatment and care for them and their partners. And of course, for these communities as well, they are also provided with information to prevention and the kits for prevention the COVID-19. So, and finally, we manage the referral to other services with NGOs or institutions from other sectors, since there are many needs with which migrants arrive in our countries that we don't have all the capacity to attend. That's it. Basically, that is what we are doing here in Colombia. Thank you for your attention. So now I will pass off to Beth.
Thank you, Karen, so much.
So fast.
Thank you, Karen, so much. I'm going to have you stay on with me, and I will welcome Juliana back on, as well as Steve Cooke. My name is Peg Chamberlain, and I will be moderating the question and answer session right now. If you haven't done so already, please go to the Q&A section of Zoom and input your questions. First of all, I just want to thank all three of you again. And I don't know if everyone realizes you're all in far-reaching areas of the globe. Karen and Steve are in Colombia. Juliana is in Tennessee. We miss having these events in person, but when I think about the scope of being able to bring you all together in an evening and have this discussion, it's actually pretty cool that we're able to do such a far-reaching event. So thank you for being here, all three of you. And I'm going to jump into some questions. Juliana, I have so many attendees writing in the Q&A that they're so grateful for your movie and for what you're doing for the country. They are concerned about you and your family and your crew, your movie crew. How are you staying safe once this movie is getting recognition? And also, I mean, you were in a very volatile situation on that day that you were trying to get the convoy in. How did you stay safe while you were filming?
First thing is stay safe. In all honesty, pray. When I was in the middle of all that, I said, I can't die here. Today, it's not my day. It was extremely hard that day. Well, first it was making the decision to cross the border, which I have already crossed the border so many times. It was so frustrated, right? And I said to myself, I've crossed the border just so many times in my life. I have been living in the United States for 22 years, but I lived all my childhood there. But when I saw that woman that you see in the film, Gabby, you just feel like, I felt that it was my responsibility as a human being and as a filmmaker to tell the story. And that moment I said to myself, yeah, but who I am to tell her story? There's so many other journalists doing this, right? And a year later, I find out by her that she has used images of the film that nobody else had in front of international courts. And at that moment, I was like, oh, well, I see so many other people. And she said, you got this moment to prove that I didn't have arms, that I wasn't getting arms yet. It was hard. One of my cameramen said, my sound person has been in Syria and other places. He went in, but one of the there were 2 cameras and my cell phone. I had 2 cell phones. Said I have kids and this is as far as I'm gonna go. And in my head it's like, oh God, I have kids too. But it was my film. So I just pulled my other cell phone and I start recording myself, whatever I could get. Once you're there, I cannot tell you that how terrifying it is. I'm a claustrophobic person, and just being in that crowd with so tight. When we turned around, I was filming that woman at all the times, and when we turned around, we just felt that they were shooting. So it was really hard. I had my first experience with real experience with documentary was 20 years right after September 11th. So I went to Afghanistan to film another woman. And I wasn't as scared in Afghanistan as I was scared crossing that bridge that day. As far as being fearful, yes, I was scared especially when I was gonna start showing the trailer. But you feel like you have to do it, and it's as a documentarian, and I'm not saying anything that is not true. The whole world knows it. What happened is like we need to keep saying until there is some sort of a change that's needed.
Well, amen to prayer, Juliana. You had me waves of emotion listening to you talk, as I'm sure other people that are listening to, and you are in our prayers. We will be praying beyond today for you and all your crew and for Venezuela and Colombia. I want to know if there have been any other successful humanitarian convoys since that depiction in the movie. I know that those trucks had to pull back. Have there been other trucks that have been able to get through?
I know that, in all honesty, I don't know, because a lot of things get done behind the scenes. Because right here, the opportunities, we don't care how it gets as long as the help get into Venezuela. No, I know it has been hard to get medicine there. So I can respond that question if officially
Sure,
medicine has been received in Venezuela.
sure. Thank you. Looking through my questions. Thank you everyone for putting these in. We'll try to answer a couple more. I know we're going over, but this is just such a good topic. Is the Colombian government talking about imposing restrictions on Venezuelans since they are getting overwhelmed? I know the statistics from the movie say that 3 million had come in. A second question to that, how many more have come in since that 3 million figure? Are they putting restrictions? Yeah,
I'm actually about to update those cards before the film is. I hope that the film comes in PBS here through PBS, so before we start distribution, I'm going to update that. It says that it's up to over 5 million, 5.5 million, the latest number. So that's important to update that. And the other question is like, and please, Steve and Karen, feel free to say things, but the Colombian government, it's granting a special permit for Venezuelans to be able to work legally and to get access to education and to healthcare for 10 years. My understanding, it was anybody who has the means, who did cross before January 31st of 2021. The issue is like, what I find hard is like, how do you prove that's what it gets challenged, right? That you cross the border before that, if many of them don't have the means to have a passport, or it's so expensive, almost impossible to get that there. So that gets challenging. How do I prove that I have been in the country before that? And I know they will allow some others to come if they come legally through the border. They have up to 2 years from the moment they create this law to do it. So currently that law will cover, my understanding is almost 2 million people, 1.7 Venezuelans that are there. So that is fantastic. You know, that in itself is, and that's a great step.
Wonderful. Thank you, Juliana. Karen and Steve, we know that medical teams is there. We're so grateful that medical teams is in Colombia. The movie highlighted that the US has helped. Are there other organizations and countries that are helping that you know of?
Hi, yes. Thanks for the question. There's a lot of people helping in reality. The US has been one of the biggest contributors to the support, and that has come to Colombia and to Ecuador and Peru and all the countries in this region who are responding to this crisis. But as well, the Canadian government, the German government, the Swedish government, most of the UN agencies are people that we work with regularly in our work in Santa Marta, in Boyacá, all through the country. So there's a huge international effort that is already mobilized, but in reality, given the scale and the scope of the people, it's just not enough. Where we look at the kind of international effort, the funding, the effort that is put forward to support this migration crisis, this refugee crisis, and we compare it to other similar ones around the globe. For example, in Syria, not to diminish that, but the funding allocated there is immensely more than what has been allocated to responding to this crisis. And so while people are responding, we just know that it's not enough. It really is a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, I have a attendee asking Juliana, thank you, Steve. I'm going to come back to you in a minute, but I have an attendee saying this is an excellent film. I would like to help share it far and wide. Is there a way that you would like for us to do so?
If you want to know more information about how to show the film, if you could please email us so we can have on track, who would like to know more information about where to find the film. Right now, the film is being reviewed by distributors, and we hope to start the distribution outside of the US pretty soon. And we're waiting for the review from some distributors here in the US. So I would love to, if it's private screenings like the ones that we're doing, like you want to share it with a certain group of friends and you want to support an organization, please contact us like that. But right now, publicly, I can't do it until we finish this distribution. And I thank you so much for your interest. And if you could please email us, you will be sending the information, but thecrossingmovie@gmail.com. We'll keep you updated when the film is available for the public.
Wonderful. thecrossingmovie@gmail.com, and we will be sending out an email tomorrow. So we'll have that on there for you. You don't have to remember that tonight. Then a follow-up question on that. Are you considering a follow-up documentary?
I'm actually working on it's hard because as I mentioned to you, sometimes with my films, I don't want to just do the films. There is a social work that comes after. And so I feel like I have a commitment to follow up on the community. So a lot of the past 2 months, or especially the past 2 months, I have been spending a lot of time on fundraising for those needs in that place. My goal and my dream is to do a documentary series, so I'm jumping into that world. And also writing a fiction film right now about children crossing the border from Venezuela to Colombia, I feel that fiction could also get to other audiences that sometimes they said, oh, it's a documentary, but maybe if I do it in fiction and with children, they would really understand that. So that is in development right now. If you want to know more, please email me too.
That's fantastic. And I love your heart, your strong woman's heart to take action, to not just make the film, but to go in and help. That's beautiful. It's getting late. I would love to ask more questions. I do have one important question for Steve, because we want to know what medical teams is doing, and how we can better support medical teams through that, because this movie is so amazing. And the fact that medical teams is in Colombia and helping the Venezuelans, I just love the connection that we have here for medical teams. So after seeing what's happening at the border between Colombia and Venezuela, how and did medical teams decide where they would place themselves and then what they would do to help in this crisis?
Yeah, that's a good question. Medical teams registered to start working in Colombia in 2019 and started our work in 2020 in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, which certainly added challenges to starting new programs and reaching people at the community level, where we couldn't really go face-to-face to people in the community as we had planned. As Karen showed in her presentation in the map of Colombia, people hit from Venezuela and come to cities like Cúcuta, where you've seen the film. And many of them stay there for a long time, or maybe they become like migrants that go back and forth across the border as they're trying to still stay in touch with family or maintain work on the other side of the border. But most of them continue beyond Cúcuta into the country. And so when medical teams started in Colombia, what we did was looked initially at the border and the cities along the border. And then we looked at kind of the next recipient cities, the cities that were receiving the migrants who had been in Colombia for a little while now, usually had left cities like Cúcuta on foot, and now they're at another city trying to settle. They're trying to reestablish themselves with some kind of stability for themselves and their children. And that's when medical teams started to work. We also looked at those cities and realized there were existing medical clinics, hospitals, health facilities there that were struggling to cope with the amount of additional people that were coming through. That was even before the COVID-19 pandemic. So we established our programs in those cities to help people who were trying to reestablish themselves, people who hadn't had access to healthcare for years in some respects. Finding, as we saw in the film and we've talked about, young women who were first-time mothers, who were pregnant, who found themselves in a foreign country without documentation and have no idea how they're going to have a safe delivery of their baby. And what we are doing is developing programs to work with them at community level, but then connect them to those existing clinics as well. So rather than running our own clinics, which is what medical teams does in some other countries, we've got partnerships with the existing hospitals and clinics, and we work for people in the community and then draw them into the existing clinics that are there so they can get healthcare, especially those people who haven't got the documentation that they need to access those visas and things like that, which would help them in the long term get access to healthcare, which is what we're doing as well. So that's how we've positioned ourselves. We're working with other NGOs on the border, in other cities with government entities to cooperate, coordinate, and make sure that we're all linking together. But the projects that Karen and others are running are in those kind of next level cities that are actually the ones that are where the population is booming and are struggling to cope with not just the immediate influx of people, but people that are planning to stay for what's going to be a very, very long time now.
Yeah. And a lot of my questions, people center around what we're in, what our world is in right now. How is COVID affecting your work there? And what is the transmission rate? How is COVID being, what's the vaccination status in Colombia and Venezuela?
In a nutshell, the COVID pandemic has been horrific for Venezuela and Colombia and Peru and Ecuador. You'll see from the news that Latin America has been particularly hard hit by COVID in terms of the rates. When you look at the population size, the rate of infection, the rate of deaths is amongst the highest in the world. I think Colombia has recently been the 10th highest worst impact country in the world. We don't have a whole lot of data from Venezuela since the pandemic started. We're even struggling to get data from Colombia since the pandemic started, because collecting data is harder when you cannot go and do surveys and things like that. The vaccination program has started in Colombia now. It's increasing, but most Venezuelan migrants don't have access to the vaccine. And so we're doing a lot of work right now to help make sure that people are aware of when and where and how they can access a vaccine when it becomes available. But there's not yet enough for the whole population.
Sure.
We're adapting a lot of our work we've never used WhatsApp so much in our lives, because that's how we engage with households now. We have volunteers who spend a lot of their days on the phone, calling pregnant women, calling families who've had sick children who've been to the clinic, and we have follow-up calls with them. We're handing out and delivering masks, hand sanitizer, hygiene products. And we're also developing new programs to help people to isolate better if they have COVID symptoms, so that they can actually are able to stay home somewhere or keep themselves isolated when they don't know how they're going to manage their children if they need to find work or get to the store or something like that. So we're also kind of moving to that kind of work as well. But the big thing is really helping to make sure that clinics continue to survive. If the hospitals and the health system collapses, then they cannot help migrants, they cannot help Colombians, they cannot help anyone. So a lot of what we're doing is working alongside those clinics and making sure they can cope, training them on how to respond to this crisis, manage infections, and helping to make sure that those people who are scared to go to the clinics now because of COVID are still able to access healthcare some other way in those clinics that aren't COVID wards.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All three of you, this has been wonderful. I could go on for another hour, but you're in later time zones than us. We're going to let you go to bed. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass off to Deb, and she has just a short wrap up for the evening.
Wow. Well, thanks everyone for the great questions. And thanks, Peg, for leading that very interesting question and answer session. And we'd like to just thank our presenters most sincerely. Karen, Steve, and Juliana, thank you for your generosity in sharing your time, in your expertise, and your passion to help all of us understand better the ongoing crisis in Venezuela and Colombia, and the difficult plight of so many millions of migrants. I've learned so much tonight. Thank you so much. We just are very grateful. And to our attendees, if you are moved to do so, any donation made via this event tonight will 100% support the medical team's efforts in Colombia. And a donate link has been in the chat, I think, several times at this point. And I'd just like to tell you about some exciting Healthy Women, Healthy World events we have coming up. Our next book club will meet virtually on August 18th, and we'll discuss the very unique book, The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abi Dare. And on Thursday, September 23rd, we'll hold our annual luncheon virtually again this year. But we're excited to have Helen Manson as our speaker. And she is an engaging storyteller and photojournalist, and will also honor our Humanitarian of the Year. So please join us for these events. We'd love to see you again. Watch for a follow-up email, as we mentioned earlier. It'll have relevant links and suggestions for ways to stay engaged and take action. And finally, a shout out to those who are hosting or attending a watch party tonight. I hope it was fun. And to all of our participants, thank you so much for your interest and for attending. We truly hope you enjoyed the film and that you found this program informative and worthwhile. So until our next gathering, we wish you lots of fun summer adventures and good night.